We're live. Good everyone. Before we begin, can I please check that everyone can hear me clearly? Can you hear me clearly? No? Yeah. Sound issues? We haven't got anybody dialing in, have we? Touch on not, okay? So members joining remote will not be able to vote. There's no one there, so it doesn't really matter. Welcome members of the public who are logging in from home. You're very much welcome to do that. Concerning meeting etiquette, please direct all questions or responses to me as chair, or nod or indicate, and I will do my best to bring you in. If you wish to speak, kindly indicate using your physical hand. And the first time you speak, can you just introduce yourself and your job title and what department you're from. That A, for the minutes, and B, just to inform people the context, how you're answering the question, be really useful. This is the meeting of London Borough of Newham's Crime and Environment and Transport Scrutiny Committee, now called to order. Item number 1, welcome introductions. Welcome to the meeting. My name is Councillor Terence Paul, Vice Chair of the committee, and I'm the ward member for Stratford Ward. I'll now invite the commission members to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Liz Cronin, Councillor for Forest Gate.
Hi, Councillor Nate Higgins, Councillor for Stratford Park.
And Councillor Fallon on his way. He went to East Ham. Someone did read his papers. I'd like to welcome Emma, the cabinet member, and your officers, and welcome to Rebecca, who's new from us from Barking Devon.
Yes, although now very much Newham.
Very much new. I'm going to take the items as per the agenda item. I'm not going to move anything around. There are 3 main agenda items today. I aim to give roughly half an hour to 45 minutes to each of the main agenda items. And this is what I will say. When you give your answer, please be concise to the point. If you don't know the answer, just say so. If you want to follow up with a response, please invite that. And what we do like as a committee is honest answers. If we don't get the answer we want, we'll ask you again. We have read our papers, I just advise you of that. And what I will say, this is a constructive meeting. We're here to provide scrutiny, but also to ask questions on behalf of the residents. And that's what we're here for. And please see the meeting in that regard. It's a constructive meeting. And for officers, this is a time for you to shine and to tell the world what you're doing, okay, and what you're doing and how you're doing it, and how you're doing the work on behalf of the resident. And that's the tone of the meeting I'll be taking all the way forward. And also to our police partner to tell us the great work you're doing. Thank you. In terms of membership, the next item on the agenda concerning membership, including any absences. Apologies received from Councillor James Beckles and Councillor Rachel Tripp due to a meeting clash. Apologies from Councillor Garfield, Councillor Stephanie Garfield, Simon Rush as well. Yeah, we've got that. Okay. So we're going to go into any declarations of interest from any members. Okay. The next item that's noted, we're going to go into item number 4, the minutes. The next item of business is the minutes of the 24th of September. Are there any proposed amendments? Or can we agree the minutes? Councillor?
Just on point 5.7 on page 4, I think, his name's on there, but there was a discussion at the last meeting about the council motion to establish a inquiry into the fixed estate charge. That is in the minutes, which is good, but it doesn't reference the council motion at all. So it looks kind of odd that we're having a discussion about it here, despite whereas the reason for that is because a motion asked us to.
So, thank you for that. So can we add in the minutes the date and the reference for the motion on the fixed estate charge?
Probably the particular resolution that it was related to.
I think it's from memory last December, but please check that. Happy with that? Okay. I move but the minutes with that amendment for the correct record. Can we agree there? Thank you very much. Item number 5, the work programme. Can we just agree there? Yeah, agreed. Okay, take that as agreed. Can I have a second there for that? Good. Thank you, Councillor Tony. Okay, going to the next item of business. We'll get there, don't worry, people. The next item
Oh,
is,
sorry, just in the work programme chat, I'm very sorry. I just wanted to point out that at the last meeting, we asked the parking service to look at workplace parking levy, and it came up at full council last night that some work in relation to that made the council think that it might not be legally possible for us to do it in the way that we envisioned. But that was challenged, and the monitoring officer, I asked the monitoring officer to look into it. Obviously, that was like an interaction at full council, but because that was that response that was referenced at full council is exactly what is in the response here.
Okay.
So we haven't got time on the agenda here, but we should do something about it because the committee seemed pretty keen on the idea.
okay, so in terms of the
And
religion,
establishing a legal thing because it was disputed.
okay, so in terms of action, how do you want to get that forward?
Probably like it being space on the next meeting or something like that, or at least a more detailed response.
Okay, can we take that actions away and come back with a formal working agreement? Agree with that? Okay. Before we go in, can I just say thank you? We had a very good meeting to Jenkins Lane last week. We had to put our boots on and our high vis, which is very good. I'm an expert in mattresses now. It's excellent. I got a pair of boots. Can I thank Lindsay Smith, who took a day off to come and facilitate us, and also Kevin for organising. I suspect there are other officers behind the scenes who will remain nameless. Just to thank the officers for organising that. It was a very good visit. And I'm an expert in all things fire streams of waste now. So you've got Lindsay to thank now. All right? But it's a very good visit, and I would recommend, but that is done next year for the next group of councillors who are on this committee. But that is continued as a yearly basis. Just so we know what we're talking about when we talk about waste. That was a very good thing. Thank you. Thank you. Right. Item number 6 is the annual review of the Newham Safety Partnership. Who's going to be introducing that item?
I can do that, Councillor.
Introduce yourself, please.
Sorry, yes. So Lisa Rosier, I'm the Assistant Director for Community Safety and Corporate Resilience. So the report was put together with a number of my team, my officers, in particular Suki and Andy, who was instrumental in drafting this report, which goes from the plan goes from 2025 to 2028. So I really appreciate all the work that they put into putting this together. At the last meeting, when we reported on this, we were coming to the end of the previous strategic plan. And so this has been an update. As the Chair has said, it's been read. Just wanted to point out some highlights that we've had a delivery plan with a number of outcomes, which we're still working on, that this is a statutory requirement and it's a partnership. It's not led by Newham. It's a partnership with a number of different organisations. We did a number of surveys that were sent out to the community and to have a look as part of our consultation on what our priorities would be. Some are very similar to the plan that we presented last year, the end of our last plan. Being honest, we only had about 107 responses, which is something that I know we're going to be working on. How do we reach the community and engage with the community to get a bit more responses on the plan and on their priorities, and as well as with the partnerships. We identify the key priorities which are listed, with one of the focuses being on trust, engagement and equity. Some of the achievements, particularly with violence against women and girls, we've looked at 20 plus community public engagement sessions have been held across the borough. There's been 18 theatre performances focused on misogyny and violence against women in secondary schools, ranging, I think it was about almost 3,000. One of the team members that works in Suki's team is leading on that. He's done a very good job. We've done 90 talk consent workshops and assemblies on boundaries, consent and respectful behaviour. He's consulted with over 200 women and girls that helped to influence the violence against women priority. We've engaged in training opportunities, and in the future we do want to determine how we can reach our community members further to be more inclusive. We're now looking at a newsletter which will be specifically about outward-facing and community engagement. We're in the process of developing a 12-month forward plan. So what are we doing for 2026? And we'd certainly welcome any community input on that and enhance our partnership work. As I said, this is a partnership looking at walk and talk initiatives. We've worked with some of our partners on the Ask Angela campaign to see how effective that's been. We've put QR coding posters on the Women's Safety webpage. And we've developed a number of other strategies, including the hate crime strategy, which Suki can address later on. There's some key achievements which is in the plan, including just recently the 16 days of activism, where we've had a great response from our community partners, Excel London, who lit up the Stadium in Orange, the London Stadium, and obviously with senior leadership and our colleagues and partners wearing orange in recognition of 16 days of activism. As I said, we talked about the website, some of the covered challenges. We've looked at the objectives which are in the plan to coordinate partnership efforts, develop the strategic plan, enhance service delivery, which is something that we're really focused on because we really, moving forward, we want to make sure that we're reaching our community and we're addressing community needs. And that's something that we've tried to focus on, but I don't think we've been as effective as we could be. And that's something that's in the 2026 plan moving forward for next year. We want to be able to measure how we're reaching the community and how are we making that impact. We've also in the plan, and I'll just touch briefly on this with our question number 7 with the ASB initiatives. We've at the last time we presented our ASB plan, which was almost 12 months ago, we had staffing shortages. We didn't have a manager. It was down to 5 staff. It was very, very challenging times trying to also meet the needs of the community. We've now have a manager. We're back up to full staff. And in the last several months, we've been able to introduce our Out of Noise team on a Friday and Saturday night. We've met with the housing regulators' recommendations for ASB. We've addressed the housing regulators' concerns about the number of hate incidents being reported. In his report, there was like 3 or 4. When we went back and took a look, we found out that we had too many codes. Some of the codes were incorrectly listed, and some of them were very much subcodes. So we've gone in and cleaned all those out. We've done a lot of training with staff. We now, as of between April and September, we've realised there's been 134 hate incidents reported, and since September to December, there's now been 20. We've updated our policies, written a vision and mission statement for the team. All of our teams have their own vision and mission statement now. Very much community focused. We're working on the website, updating the website to make it easier for our residents in the community to report antisocial behaviour and to know which team it goes to. It's been too confusing in the past, so we're currently working on that with our IT team as well, which will have a list of instructions of what is antisocial behaviour, which team does it go to. We've changed our letters that were being sent out, more customer focused, and we've also done, as I said, better training for the team, which includes hate crime, domestic abuse, noise handling, prevention, conflict resolution, safeguarding, and that's just at this stage. Obviously, that's going to be ongoing. So that's just some of the highlights with the policies. So that's
okay. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for the reports. They're very good. Very rich. So thank you for that. It's really good. Chair's pretty going to start off. I look at one of your current challenges, box 1. The number of offences has increased by 10.5%. So if a resident was watching us tonight, is our plan sufficient to deal with the demands?
And this is with ASB, antisocial behaviour.
Yeah, there's a page here, current challenges. on page 47 of my pack, but I think it's just after the odd key achievements table.
Oh, well, that's for the NSP.
Well, I'm happy to comment that if you want. So my name's Andy Oakley. I'm the Interim Director for Community Safety and Regulatory Services. So I guess the first thing I'd say is the data that you see here is a kind of a moment in time. Data is always a moment in time. And what that says there might not be exactly how it is now. This is data that was pulled together when we were developing the new community safety strategy about a year ago. But what it does highlight is some of the challenges, and the challenges remain. In answer to your question, we don't know yet. You know, we're doing a lot of new stuff as a result of the strategy. What we have acknowledged is that we probably haven't been as good at monitoring outcomes and the effectiveness of what we're delivering historically. And there is a program of work to try and make sure that not only are we delivering lots of stuff, we actually know whether we're getting value for money and whether we know whether it's working. We're doing that with some of it, but it's still a work in progress, and we'll have evidence.
It was remiss of me, I did invite Councillor Verby to Cabinet. Do you want to make any introductory remarks?
Yes, I can do. Councillor Verdi, Cabinet Member for Community Safety. After brief housing needs, homelessness and private rental sector, and Deputy Mayor Green Street West. Chair, you can see obviously, and colleagues out here, look, there's a lot of action that's actually taking place. But one of the key things, as you know, with the action tracker that sits behind it, it's always about the action that we want to see and demonstrate to residents that all the work we put into it, amongst the challenges that we've got, that we are, a bit like Andy said just now, it's a demonstration that we are putting the metrics in place to show those outcome of return, and residents actually see at face value. I think it's about being really transparent. I think what you see is what the discussion we've had over the years, where we add value to one of the key parts of priorities. What do we want to make sure we do better at? Less is more is one of the key things, and making sure that we've got a plan that delivers on that. So rather than being all this, as we've seen in previous scenarios, is where we take on a lot more than we need to do at some times and cases. How can we ensure that the plans that we've got, working with partners, whether it's the Met Police, Safer Business Network, is actually deliverable? That's one of the key things we want to demonstrate, and residents know that. And I think what this plan does and demonstrates now is we're in a much better place where we're refining our approach to what we're trying to do. And you're seeing that some of these are key challenges, as Andy mentioned, will change at a time. But then the outturn return, residents start seeing it on the ground of these are the results, recognising the challenges of a growing population and the rest that comes.
Before I begin short with other members, how will a resident feel the delivery of this plan?
Any chance?
I'll ask you, then I'll ask you.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I think one of the key things, I think, it's supposed to be, let's say, neighbourhoods, let's say, for instance, like some of the practical work that's happened on the ground, working with Met Police specials, public realm changes, those have constituted in terms of what residents can physically see on the ground in terms of behaviour pattern change, enforcement that's done on it, visual presence as well.
Yeah.
I think the key thing is we spoke about it previously, is really important is that not just residents but members ultimately get told that information. So it's not just what you see on the ground, but what you might physically read. I know we touched upon it earlier as well, about sometimes the information, reading is not enough. Sometimes you want to see the physical presence of what's happening on the ground and the changing of furniture. I think the park might be another one where you see some of the presence around what's being done there, and working in partnership around what type of presence could you have, where you had pop-ups being put there from these front hubs. So certain things like that, I think residents then see ultimately that these things are actually changing face value, rather than it being just on a piece of paper.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Councillor. So, Sean McDermott, I'm the Director of Community Safety and now Integrated Enforcement. Just a couple of bits and pieces from me. I think just want to sort of really stress the outcome and output focus of the plan, because that was lacking before. We had a lot of good activity, and what I say to my team is really good doing good work, but what does good look like? And ultimately that comes from the residents. So we've definitely changed the style of the NSP plan and the delivery plans to be much more outcome focused. The challenge will always be trying to evaluate some of those things and the ability to do that, but that's very much the intent behind it. In terms of crime overall, as Andy said, this was a snapshot in time. I've got the latest dashboard because obviously I've been looking at that. And generally speaking, we've stayed fairly stable in terms of our crime overall in the borough. There's some areas where we've made massive progress. So hate crime, domestic abuse, vehicle crime, burglary, they've all seen quite significant reductions. A little bit on the theft side as well, because of the efforts of particularly Safer Business Network and the policing teams and colleagues around Stratford and East Ham. Where we have got concerns, again, being honest, we have seen a slight uptake in violence. Although violence with injuries is down, it's generally around youth violence. I've got some concerns around, being honest, sexual offending as well. We've seen peaks and troughs, sometimes that's sort of seasonal, but that's something we're really conscious of. So we've been doing a lot of work, as Lisa said, around things like R-scans, working with licensed premises, doing things like walk and talks. And what we said is it's very good to do things like 16 days of action and show the borough that we're actually listening, we care, but that's the window shop. It's about what do we do behind the scenes, how are we going to land it. So Lisa and the team will be doing a lot of work to make sure we've got some clear deliverables. So they would be the main challenges, I would say. In terms of, from my perspective, it's always a real challenge because everyone's so busy, and it applies to the council weekly, to partners. It's just constant. Get everyone G'd up and up for things, if I can use that term. What we've done since coming into post with the NSP or the Community Safety Partnership, it was 4 or 5 board meetings a year. We now have a monthly exec because we need to keep the show on the road in between meetings. So really that's where the core partners sort of keep an eye on the crime data, critical incidents. We work those through, as well as horizon scanning. Resources wise, we have made over the last few years, as you probably know, there's reductions in community safety for several years. Dating back when I was a police officer, there was 50 strong police officers and a massive team. We don't have that anymore. But the Councillor Verdin and other council colleagues are very keen to make sure we don't lose further resources for community safety at a time when some other boroughs have been able to grow through different means, for example. So we are sort of holding our own. But I just want to highlight there are things we need to do better. There are actually things we'd welcome some recommendations on. Community engagement is something. I hope that was useful, Chair. But again, I just want to say thanks to the officers. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Liz. I appreciate what you were saying, Sean, about the report being more outcomes focused, and it does have these, how will we measure progress and success, which I appreciate. The problem is it doesn't. It's just that it's directional. It's not like there's no threshold. There's no with what we are saying we are going to do. You've got this list of things we expect to achieve this proportion of an outcome, and when there's other parts of this report that say an achievement, we've delivered a 2% reduction in this kind of crime. The reality is you could have done nothing and you might have seen a 2% reduction because the numbers will change year to year. And so we need to know what you're actually saying looks like success. Otherwise, 3 years from now when they're writing the next one and they want to know, did this work or not? There's no way looking at this, how will we measure success to know, did it actually work, other than is it directionally correct? And it's the direction isn't a surprise. Everyone wants to see crime lower. That's not the thing. The thing is we're putting in this amount of resource and we expect it to deliver this level of outcome. And that isn't in this report from what I see.
Yeah, sure. So the team can sort of go into more detail. So you've got the overarching community safety strategy. From that, the approach we've taken this time round compared to previous times, when I think I came to the meeting last time and said we had loads of really glossy strategies, really nice. When I arrived, it was about what we actually delivered, and that's a challenge. So certainly I'm a bit of a performance ogre, so we've turned that around. What we've now got is we've got 18-month delivery plans. So as well as doing the priority, and that's the very high-level document, and you're right to highlight that, we've now got delivery plans, and the team have done in conjunction with partners, worked out what some of those outcome measures are. When we can sort of identify what a target would be we've started to include that, because I said I'd really like some stretch targets. One of the challenges you've identified was quite right. You have some years where you can pull out all the stops and it still goes up and the metrics don't turn up. Other years you can do absolutely nothing, and
I get that, and I get why in that position you might be reticent to put a target on there, because some of this is not in your control. But I still think the right thing to do is to say, we're doing these actions because we expect those actions to deliver X result. And if that doesn't happen, that's then we have a conversation about why. it's not about like raking you over the coals if it doesn't happen. It's about knowing what we get, what outcome we get for what input.
I feel that's a sort of recommendation for it.
Yeah.
Would you be happy? I get what we both said about looking forward.
And for what it's worth, you see all of the step-by-step progress that you're making. Like I appreciate that. It's a bit harder for us to see it from where we're at.
Yeah.
I don't want to be ignorant of the work that's been done.
No, Chair, for me, so one of the things might be, if it's helpful, we could share our delivery plan, because you're absolutely right, that's the point I'm making. We are moving to that. We will be putting sort of targets in and what success looks like. So if we share that, it would be really handy for sort of feedback.
Okay, it's really helpful.
Sorry, Chair, just one more thing. What would be really great though is that when you get to the next time this is being reviewed, when we're looking at what the key achievements of the plan are, that we can say that they're outputs focused, not inputs, because what we're looking at here on the achievements is all inputs.
I don't want to lose your recommendation. Can you share what you just said you're going to share, and what we can then do, come back with on the basis of what we see, we can make a recommendation for next year and how we tee it up. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, that's really happy, because this really helped us. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Coleman.
Yeah, similar line of questioning on the key achievements. Like, instead of, we've installed amnesty bins, it's very difficult to tell, has that had an effect on crime? Is that, positive, negative, no effect? And then now it's great to hear that the delivery plan and outcome measures are more in place. I'm wondering, are you confident that it can be kind of fast enough and iterative enough and nimble enough? Like, if you see a measure isn't working and it's not working, or it's not, are you confident that you quickly go, right, that's not working, let's test something else, and so on and so on?
Yeah, I mean, on that point, that is always a bit of a challenge. What we've done, again, just to highlight, so we never had, with the Community Safety Partnership, they were board meetings, we never had the exec. So what I've done over the last year with partners is we have a monthly exec, so we do look at crime on a monthly basis, because the challenge is you might have a massive action plan, coming back to your point, Councillor Hickey, you've got all these really nice actions at the start of the year, and it's quite something common that's across boroughs. It gets reviewed maybe once or twice, and at the end of the year, everyone rushes around to try and update their actions, and the crime might have gone through the roof. So we introduce the exec to hopefully get a better grip on things. So, for example, if we see a particular trend coming up, the other thing which Al will touch on is obviously the NICE model. So although that's broader and it's more antisocial behaviour, we do focus on some crime types like serious violence and sexual offending. So that's another form of tasking on a weekly, monthly basis. So we try and be as agile as we can within the resource constraints, and obviously some of those rely on partners, and obviously it's not lost that the level of police obstruction, particularly protests over the last year, and I think some of the dedicated teams that they've now got in place and Stratford and East Ham have really sort of helped. But
I've just got one further question. Looking at the crime and disorder strategic assessment, the big yellow document, just sitting below, robbery, theft or whatever, do you have data on who are the offenders? Because you're tackling the offence, let's say, but offences are caused by individuals.
That's I might hand, if it's okay, Joe, I might hand over to the police college. What I would say is when we look at, for example, the NICE monthly, and even on the NSP exec, we do try and break it down to what's called a role profile, so victim, offender, location and temporal. There is a challenge around, apologies to keep saying there's a challenge, but being honest, the Met's Connect system, which was a new data system, which has brought various systems that we used to run together. It's better in some regard, but some of the data's been a bit hit and miss.
The reason why I asked that, I went last year on a walk around with the community. There's a group of girls at Sarah Bennell who call it a community safety group, or the community safety club. I think I'm doing a disservice, right? They got a club and they look at safety in the area. And me and Councillor Garfield went on a walk around with them. It was very instructive, because they were looking at bus stops and telling me how it works for them. The park on Stratford, how it works for them, completely changed my view of putting on their lens. And what it struck me, looking at the violence against women and girls, who are the specific perpetrators. We are to develop a strategy to target those offenders. I'd be interested in who are they, because they probably have an MO and we need to target. That's why I asked the question, do we have data on who sits behind it? And also, coming to you in a moment, when we looked at domestic violence as well, again, I noticed it looks like the figures have decreased, but we've got the highest in London, one of the highest figures. My question will be, well, who is it we need to be targeting and where? I think you half asked the question with the vault mechanism, but I let the police. Have I got you are an inspector? Am I really right?
Indeed. I'm Inspector, those of you who don't know me, I'm Inspector Richard Oldfield, been a police officer for about 20 years. I've been in Newham for the last 3-4 years.
And you never left, have you?
I've policed most areas north of the river, but I seem to come back to this sort of neck of the woods and neighbourhood policing as well. So I can talk generally, and then I'll come back. So it's no secret that the police are facing challenges. London is growing. There are more people to protect. Crime becomes more and more complex, especially with social media and how that whole electronic world shrinks the contact. So it's not just a case of your child is going to interact with other children at school and that's it, and then they leave those interactions and they come home and they are safe. They are now still connected, and they're not only connected to the kids at that school, they're connected to the kids at the next school, they're connected to adults on the other side of the world. And on so many levels, my job over the last 20 years has become more and more complex. Obviously, at the moment, we are going through budget issues and we are shrinking. So there are less cops now than when I first started. However, we are also looking at how we can improve the use of body worn, for instance, upgrades to our computer systems like the Connect system. Again, it provides advantages, as well as the live facial recognition. So that is something that we've used quite a lot in Newham, and that in particular, for me, is a fantastic tool because it makes my officers incredibly efficient. It means actually they're not going to stand there and go, all right, should I stop this person? They don't look right, because what does a criminal look like? There's not going to be any stereotyping. There's not any equality issues. Those systems will say this is a wanted criminal. They compare with the custody imaging within the police system and say you need to go and speak to this person. So it makes those officers incredibly efficient, and it targets wanted offenders, and the rest of the community that's going about their business, they can carry on going about their business knowing that actually if any wanted criminals come to Stratford, East Ham, the police will know exactly who they are and will do. So we have opportunities like that mean that although I've got less cops, actually I can use them more effectively and more efficiently. I know we talked about figures, and I do appreciate that there are lots of different issues when we talk about figures. We talk about trust, we talk about who's reporting, who's not reporting. From our system, when we do have to use a benchmark, across Newham, crime is marginally down, as I have it, 1.4%. 1.4% doesn't sound like a lot. That's 558 less crimes. When you start looking at the data, there are 600 additional drug offences, which is drug offences tend to be where police are being more proactive. That for me again says that this is officers being more efficient, more effective, working harder for the communities they serve. Our detection rates are going up. So the positive outcome rates, that is where effectively an offender has been identified and they've had what's called a positive outcome, which is normally they have been sent to court and charged with an offence, or it might be actually they received an out-of-court settlement, an out-of-court process, such as some of the diversion tactics we have available to us. There are two particular areas that I've got some details on here because they are big crime generators, and that is the East Ham area around the East Ham High Street, as well as Stratford.
Yeah, we're looking at that in a moment, yeah.
No worries. We'll have got some pictures from our.
The second part of the agenda was specifically on that too.
No worries, I'll hold off on that.
So that's really good. I've just got one question. I noticed, Sean or Lisa, modern slavery and exploitation. I noticed a couple of months ago the government had Home Office had a series of raids across the country looking at car washes, barber shops and nail bars, looking at sources of potential criminal activity. What work are we doing in Newham to align ourselves with the government agenda on that issue?
Yeah, I can sort of give you a bit of steer on that, Councillor, because I know we've spoken about it before. So we obviously support those types of activity where we've got a statutory duty to comply. So obviously I need to make it sort of clear we're not obviously the border force, likewise with the councils, not the police, but where there's a particular operation where, for example, there's some operations around restaurants in the borough. Obviously, because there's a food safety element to it, and obviously there could be disruption on the premises as a whole, rather than focus on particularly people who might come in from whatever country, that's when the team would engage. Likewise, if there's information that we receive, so for example, if you had a particular property of concern, we'd absolutely work with our contacts at Border Force. However, it's not a set thing that we work on immigration enforcement. So, for example, we wouldn't be looking to tackle like illegal work and things like that.
Then, because I noticed we've got a modern day slavery partnership action plan.
Yeah.
So that means it's partners that we've got a role in that. So, for example, in terms of the training standards issued regarding car washes, do we have an active programme of inspecting those car washes, for example? Do we have an active programme of inspecting nail bars for the trading standards issues when we are directly responsible for that part of the statutory envelope?
Yeah, so to be fair, I don't know if Lisa and Suki can come in. We don't have, I wouldn't say we have an active programme of work, because we don't necessarily have the resources for that. Some of those areas we might have a particular licensing regime, so we'd have to potentially do that. If it was a beauty treatment premises, for example, I'll be fair, we don't go around car washes as an active thing, because obviously the responsibilities around that. What I would say is our other responsibility, which is important, and it's probably a sort of a softer side to what you're describing, is modern slavery is about the victims.
Okay.
So it's just to highlight
I'm
that.
a resident,
Yeah,
and I walk around and I see car washes, I see nail bars, and I see loads of barber shops around. I might think something's going on. As a local authority, we have some statutory responsibility, for example, training standards, health and safety. You have here a partnership action plan, which would imply there is some role for the local authority. All I ask for, perhaps, you might want to consider how that plan is written down and codified. Because on one side, you're saying we have an action plan. On the other side, we don't really inspect. If I'm a resident, I would expect the council to do its utmost and perhaps to work in partnership with statutory authorities who are doing their inspection processes.
yeah. I mean, we do work in absolute partnership. It's just obviously the lens we take it through in terms of doing a programme of work, because our general view, and Suki and Lisa might be able to talk, is generally about things like supporting victims of modern slavery and things like the national referral mechanism. So we would normally support on that rather than lead an enforcement campaign, if I can make...
Let me put the word back at you. We have a trading standards responsibility, correct?
Yes.
Right. So if we were to follow our trading standards responsibility, we would inspect the car wash, the barber shop, the nail bar, wouldn't we? On our own.
It would depend, and I'm not being devil's advocate at all here, Chair. It obviously, we've got a number of programmes. We have an inspection regime based on the licensing requirement for those, and obviously we'd also do a risk-based approach. So it's a bit like food safety premises. We can't get round every single proactive food safety premises. We've got those we're responsible for. So, go on, please.
I agree where you're coming from, that we are in an environment out there where people's perceptions run away from the reality. Right? What I'm saying, we have a statutory duty on those areas of car washes, nail bars, and hairdressers. Statute for trading standards. Residents would expect us to enforce the law.
That's right, yeah.
Right? So perhaps what I'm asking to take back as a recommendation, but you take that back, and with limited resources, let's say, you look at how we can comply with our trading standards law, because if we have an action plan, then that in terms of there is some action and some partnership. It does imply it implies passivity. What I'm asking for is proactiveness, especially in environments where a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, I put on my TV, and I got the Home Office on my TV telling me what they're doing. I would expect a similar activity as a resident in my high street. I'll leave it as that. I understand the complexity.
Absolutely, I do understand the point of view, and I do understand the concerns around it. So it's not lost on me.
I'm just trying to match where the resident will be, and they will say, "What are you doing about it, Sean?" They wouldn't say, "Oh well, this is a partnership approach." They're like, "What are you doing about it?"
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think just the other point, just for people watching, is obviously that sometimes the victim side gets lost in the conversation and the perception as well, because people are often brought over, treated really humanely, and that's where we have got a really leading role. We want to try and support that. So it's balancing those messages up. Yeah.
Councillor Fleur wanted to. Police officer, Femi, Nate.
No,
Femi.
Yeah.
Femi.
Okay.
Officer. Okay.
I was just going to mention, obviously, the local neighbourhoods do work with trading standards quite regularly. There was a operation, the name was Zoryden, in October.
Yeah.
A number of second-hand, the sort of pop-up phone shops was visited, and a couple of other venues involved in illicit and counterfeit goods identified by the council. They were joint visits with officers to support trading standards, and I know they were particularly successful in terms of large quantities of illegal and counterfeit goods that were seized. And I know recently we had a operation in East Ham under the name of Each Out, which I can't go into the full details of it because the investigation is still going on. I know trading standards were absolutely fantastic, and as the investigation goes on, we're relying on them to make sure that we have a positive end result in terms of closures and licences.
I mean, we are going to be discussing East Ham on the next agenda item. If your question is specifically East Ham related, I'll just say that before you ask the question.
Not really, not about East Ham.
Okay, right, I'll go on to, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah.
Go on, throw it.
I mean, I heard you when you talked currently about, do you think that reoffending is a problem, that people, after arresting people, taking them to station, they still come back to the road and you still have to deal with it? And if that is the case, what do you think we can do to stop reoffending?
So one of the difficult pieces for the police is there is a wider sort of system. You have the courts, the prisons. There are certain things beyond my control as an inspector within Newham. For instance, how long of a sentence a criminal serves. And if they're only serving 40%, for instance, of a sentence, at what point does it become a deterrent, and at what point does it become an inconvenience? There are also issues that we'll have where, again, because of the strains on those other services, where we may arrest the offender, take him to court, and the court will say, okay, come back in a month's time because we're not able to deal with you today. and obviously in a month's time, he doesn't come back. And then the police now have to locate him, arrest him for failure to appear, bring him back to the courts, only then for the courts again to be in a position where they have to then say, okay, we'll come back on this day.
It's a structural issue of the court.
So it's a structural issue that then means actually the sentencing, the punishment, if you like, is far removed from the actual crime, and that then connection for that person between I did something wrong and I faced the sentence for it is almost disconnected.
Okay. Happy you want something for going to Nate?
That's right.
I wanted to ask about hate crime, and mostly about hate crime, a little bit about domestic violence. We've heard there's in the documents that we got today, there were some claims that it's increased, some claims that it's decreased in hate crime. And then another claim that says, well, actually, if the rate is increased, that just means more reporting, not an actual increase in incidents, and therefore we should consider it a good thing. It's like perfectly possible that that's true, but it just leaves us, when all we have is the data, like that we're being told. It's not possible for us to say like what's actually going on with hate crime. And when we're looking at, a few years from now, the work that we're doing, are we measuring if it's a success or not? If we're being told that we actually can't use the hate crime reporting numbers to know whether there has been a change in hate crime, how can we actually assess the impact of the work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really, really, really good point. I mean, in terms of hard stats, we're seeing a decrease in hate crime.
Well, the document that we have here, one of the other documents on the agenda tonight says that there has been, let me just find it, sorry, an increase in hate crime. But that's just through, so...
The rates in hate was decreased over a 3-year period.
Sure, but right now, where we are in December 25, the hate crime has increased. So the hate crime has increased 6.2%. It's not this agenda item, it's the third agenda item for today, but it's talking about hate crime, and one document we've got tonight says it's decreased and another says it's increased. It's different time periods.
Yeah.
But the most recent December 25, it's saying it's increased.
The Met data, if I use that, because that's on the Met dashboard, and is that we've seen about a 10% decrease in hate crime. That's
over what period of time?
That's November to November compared to the last 12 months of that same period.
Okay, that is this report says hate crime November to December over the same time period is up 6.2.
Okay, can we leave that on the table?
Yeah,
I don't know what's happening with the actual numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it seems that we've got a sense that we can't use these numbers.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll confirm that. Sorry if there's been a mistake, but that's
from the time period.
It might be a different time period, or it might just be that's an issue.
But that's not, my point isn't about whether the numbers are correct. It's the document itself says that this is not necessarily negative, because hate and domestic offences tend to increase based on confidence in local services. So i.e. an increase in the rate is purported to be just an increase in the confidence in reporting, which might be true. I'd love to believe that, but how do we know if it's actually what's actually happening?
Is it a statistical thing, or is that?
How do we actually know what's happening?
It's a absolutely fair challenge. I think I mentioned this time. One of the things I want to start doing is tracking more around confidence and fear. Because for me, for example, if you've got high confidence to report, then you're better placed to see whether your hate crime stats and your domestic abuse stats are real. At the moment, we haven't really got good hate.
Can I ask a question? Is it, when this comes in the national media, there's always a comparison between the British Crime Survey, the trend on the British Crime Survey, and the actuality of the offence. And you can see whether perception meets reality. Is perhaps trying to answer Councillor Higgins' question. Is perhaps next year, I think it's the British Crime Survey, is that right?
They do. I'm sure they do. The MOPAC used to do a confidence league table. I think sometimes it needs to get a little bit more granular as well, particularly around certain crime types like hate crime and domestic abuse.
Anecdotally, it's definitely the case that people feel that hate crime is increasing.
So perhaps, I'm just trying to solution. So perhaps in next year's report, thinking how you do this, maybe we look at the data in terms of the figures, but as an appendices, perhaps something like the British Crime Survey, so we can have an objective measure of perception versus the reality of the crime data. That might, because I think we're going between two stools, we're not sure.
But also what Sean's saying about increase, like the rate of confidence in reporting, like that definitely needs to be impacted.
Yeah, that's some of the work around trust. One of the very quick ones, just to sort of highlight, with domestic abuse, although obviously Fiona would sort of talk a bit more sort of expertly about it. But if you take, for example, MARAC, this is the multi-agency risk assessment conference meetings that happen and look at high risk cases. Sometimes people will argue, one, you're looking at reductions in repeat offenders because they're not coming back. You must have solved that problem. If you speak to charities like Safe Lives, they say that's not necessarily a good place because you could have had a victim come through that process. Not happy with the process because you're not measuring, and it's hard to measure how satisfied someone is with the process, and then they don't want to come back. So they always advocate having a fairly stable level of repeat referrals, because you can end up the same boat as hate crime. People don't choose to report, and then you lose that data. So I think one of the big focuses we've spoke about as a partnership is about how do you better measure confidence. Yeah.
That's a good.
Can we have some, so that this doesn't just get like forgotten after this meeting, and we kind of every time it comes up we say we're not sure. So there's some way that we can kind of keep track.
I think perhaps one of the actions is for Sean and colleagues to look at the report for next year and how can they provide an objective measure of perception.
Well, not perception, it's just the reality is what is happening with hate crime. Because if we can't even measure it, because it's so subject to confidence in reporting, then how can we say what's happening, and therefore if what we're doing is working or not?
Okay, I accept the point, but isn't it looking at finding an objective way of how the individual reports that crime, and therefore the individual must have confidence in reporting?
Well, you can do things like
Just trying to think what's the
polls
action.
where you ask people like, do you feel like you've been a victim of hate crime in the last year, whether you reported it or not? There are things that you can do outside of just looking at crime numbers.
I agree, but isn't there, the action is, can you take in the sentiment what Councillor Higgins said, can you find the most objective way of finding a way that we can measure that? I'm thinking, the heat of the battle, is it something to do with the British Crime Survey? Because they often do perception measures in that format, but that might not be the best place. But can you take that away as an action?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the things you mentioned about, like, for example, we've just done a recent Women and Safety Girls public space survey. There's some work around the hate crime strategy which needs to be refreshed.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely, those questions are actually ones we've asked
And
previously.
those questions can't be one-offs that you do at one point in time when you're developing a strategy. Like if you actually want to use them to kind of measure success of work.
You want to keep them alive. Yeah, absolutely.
I think Sean has got the bones and the sentiment of what Councillor Higgins. So can you take that away? We've got it noted.
Yeah.
I will follow that up and we'll feedback. You've got that as well, right?
Yeah.
Councillor Crowley.
Thanks. Two questions. So offences in Newham are at their highest for 3 years, and it's the highest percentage increase in all of London. First of all, that's obviously a really start. So there's lots of things driving this, and it's all offences, so that's a really complex picture. But what within that would you want to draw attention to? And within that, obviously, so much of this is out of your control, out of the police control. Is there anything that we can try and be helpful to in our conversations with national government that give you the powers or the resources? Like, what would you ask of us to ask of the national government to help you bring down this really highly increasing event rate?
Yeah. Rich might want to come in as well, because a lot of this is down to sort of particularly policing resource on the crime side. And obviously like local government funding as well. I mean, I think, as Andy said, some of this is a bit of a snapshot in time. Looking at the crime stats over the last 12 months, it's been, as Rich said, there's been a very marginal, I'm not going to say, I've just said it's stable, because I don't think it's that significant. Our biggest sort of crime generator is around theft. So if you took theft out, or you really reduced it down, that would really, in terms of volume, would really reduce our sort of ranking in the, if I can use it as like a league table where we are. I think the other interesting thing is we generally appear in the top 3 volume. When you look at crimes per population, for example, that slightly gives a slightly different position. Because, for example, Westminster always comes out really high because of transient crime, not necessarily because the borough's unsafe inherently. It's just there's so many people going in, licensed premises, nighttime economy, having worked there, and then they go back out, which is a challenge. So I think theft person, I think the biggest ones for me that we want to really should be concentrating is serious youth violence. Because we have seen violence with injury sort of decrease generally, but that's where there's been a peak of knife crime. That's always a concern. I'm certainly not sitting on laurels. And then I would say for me, violence against women and girls, sexual offending should be constantly where we focus. But it's not to lose sight, because I know Councillor Higgins mentioned this last time, we can't lose sight of theft and the impact it has on people. That's why we've got colleagues, we do a lot of work with Safe Business Partnership. It's just we've got to prioritise within our priorities. Yeah.
Yeah, and within that theft, do we have a sense of what is driving that? Like, is it just cost of living? Is it? And do we have how do we measure what is driving that increase in theft?
I'll bring on my sort of panel and an expert, if that's okay. Yeah.
Evening, guys. So I'm Mo. I'm one of the partnership managers for Safe Business Network. So we cover, I'd say, more than half the London boroughs at the moment. I manage Lambeth, Southwark, Newham and Tower Hamlets. So I manage a business crime reduction partnership that is retail crime, nighttime economy crime, hospitality. We're seeing a pan-London increase in retail crime. It's not a surprise. Cost of living is probably one example, but you're seeing a massive increase in drugs, mental health, and most importantly, organised crime. And I think people sometimes don't see it. This is where we try and provide that reassurance to businesses, because organised crime is a big part in Stratford, in Newham, in its general, and across London. And we've done a lot of work with the police and partners around organised crime. So there's a lot of elements that go into it, especially with theft. Theft has increased, but the results we've gotten over the past year or so have increased as well. And maybe accountability-wise, what I can say, something you can take back is accountability for CPS and the court system. And one example I can give to you, and this is very recent, probably about 2 weeks ago, is we had a defender who's got a court order. So we managed to get a court order on her, banning her from Stratford Shopping Centre, Westfield underneath Bridge. So that's for 5 years. She had 16 grand worth of theft. She has been given a 42-week court sentence, and after 7 days she's out. And 3 times since then she's been arrested, and she's been bailed by the courts every single time. So what we're seeing is police is doing what they can. The businesses are doing what they can and reporting it. We're doing what we can and gathering that intelligence, showing the impact she's having on the business community and the local community as a whole. And we're getting the statements, we're getting the evidence, everything's ready to go. But when it's going to the CPS and when it's going to the court, we aren't getting the backup we need. I think that's one of the frustrating things about probably my job, but for businesses as well, because what you're seeing is businesses are reporting crime more because they're seeing action being taken. But when they're seeing that same repeat offender, someone asked about repeat offending, what we're trying to do when we're getting these court orders, we're trying to go after enforcement, yes. But enforcement for retail crime, when you look at all the crimes, retail crime is right at the bottom. So enforcement is not going to match that. So you've got to look at welfare. You've got to look at what conditions can you put in that court sentence. For example, if they've got drug issues, who they're linking in with for support with drugs, op-adder, a few other things. If they've got mental health, is there any mental health services? If they're sleeping rough, is CGL linked in with them? So there's so many different mechanisms that you can go around that doesn't just look at enforcement, there's also welfare. But sometimes it's that support that we need to get that welfare to them.
Can I ask 2 things? First of all, what's your name and organisation?
Mohammed Qazi, I'm Safe Business Network.
Lovely. And in terms of the action, I think it'd be useful if the cabinet member took, what the action, what you wanted, and perhaps draft and, is it a letter you draft with the MPs and the mayor?
Yeah, I was
Take
just
it as an action?
just back to
In that case though,
Councillor Cronin's point about the lobbying aspect. It's one of the key things, I suppose, irrespective of my role, whether I've lobbied, obviously gone to MOPAC, with the interim CEO of MOPAC here, in terms of that lobbying campaign around what's needed here. But I think that's a key part of demonstrating the need which is required in Newham, and then working closely. So a lot of the emails that were sent to Home Office, Home Secretary, you name it, those are the key things that attribute to say, look, this is what the focal points are. And I suppose it goes down to how do we collectively do that? So letters are the key part of that, the lobbying aspect of it, but they're making sure we send it to the right people.
And can you let the business community in Newham know what you're doing on their behalf, like the Newham Chamber?
Yeah. Oh, the new.
Yeah.
So interlinking. Yeah.
Okay. Nate, I'm going to.
Just on Councillor Cohen's point about theft, one of the things that's confusing is like when you hear theft, is some people will obviously be thinking about like shop theft, retail theft. Depending on your experience, though, a lot of people will also be thinking about like snatches. I wonder why they're reported both as. I know you can break it down sometimes, but a lot of the reports that we get often just say thefts, and like the causes and the responses and the visibility of these are very, very different. Like in my ward, for example, when you say like Stratford Olympic Park, so we've got Westfield, when you say thefts, people will assume you mean phone thefts because that's what's so visible, and the numbers on there are really worrying people. And then when you break it down, a huge proportion of that is Westfield, which, although is a problem for the shops that are there, is very different. It's affecting a very different group of people and needs to be responded to very differently. So just in the past, I understand why maybe they might have been the same kind of category of thing. I'm just wondering whether there's still value in them kind of both being reported as the same category.
So it's something about when we report theft, it's about retail theft, and
we should always be breaking this out in our reports.
Yeah.
Inspector, do you want to?
I was going to say it does break further down within the statistics.
It does, but the reports that we get, we're kind of at the mercy of whether the report writer chose to do that or not. And like when we're talking about what the factors are, when you're looking at like retail theft, a huge factor there is going to be cost of living. When you're looking at snatches, there's a very different factor that's
taking that forward. I think you're spot on. Sean, going forward in terms of reports, can you, when we look at theft, can you break it out, if you can, depending on the underlying data set, into theft against a person or theft retail or other types?
And our strategy should definitely look at them as separate things.
And just one final question before we move on to the next item. I'm looking at the section offences section, and it says here, section offences are statistically more likely to happen Thursdays and Fridays between 1 and 5. Victims are more likely to be of white ethnicity and female, and the suspects are more likely to be of unknown ethnicity followed by Asian ethnicity. And the offences are taking place in Stratford, Plaster South and Stratford Olympic Park. My question is, are these items standalone or there is a pattern here?
Yeah, I mean, we do look at different patterns as part of the NICE and the NSP exec. So what I would say is Stratford is an area where predominantly due to footfall, it's really hard to identify a particular generator. So for example, if it was concerns around a licensed premises, we'd be able to identify that and deal with that as best we can. So Stratford does come up. Other places tend to come up from different time periods. I'm
just saying that because you could infer a story here, or there could be standalone bullet points of information, right? And I'm asking the question, is there something here? Should we be concerned, but there's something other than what is here?
I mean, Alison, from a public space sort of delivery group and reach, I'm probably bringing you just more about the sort of recent knowledge, obviously I've been sort of steps away. I mean, from the meetings that certainly we chair, we do look at the bulk methodology. Sometimes the data doesn't give us a full picture because, like, for example, you highlighted about unknown suspects, and I say, well, that's not particularly helpful because I can't, what can we do around that? But what I would say is if we've got an area of concern, so for example, a few months back we had Canning Town, I think, was an area we were looking at, and we identified that there'd been a bit of a blip in, if I can use that term, in sexual offending. So we, working with colleagues around the police and licensing, we identified that we had potentially some nightclubs of concern. So therefore trading standards and licensing went in and sort of did some remedial work and that reduced.
Around the sexual offences paragraph here, but perhaps write to the committee, just provide assurance, but there isn't a pattern here which we're not looking at. I think you know where I'm going here. Right?
Yeah, we'll try and break that down into more detail, but there's not a particular, Rich, I don't know if you can confirm.
Okay, let's do it, point is made, the evidence is there for the members of the public to see themselves.
Yeah.
Looking at that, you're thinking, is there something else here? I just want assurance there is just what is happening. Provide a separate report, no more than a page,
Yeah,
2
that's
pages.
fine. Yeah, that's
on
fine.
that,
Yeah, we
on
can
one
do
item.
that. Yeah,
Okay.
no worries.
That was a really good session. I want to move on to the next agenda items. Everyone okay? Thank you for that. Really good. Thank you, Sean, and everyone else.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is Safe for Stratford, quite conveniently, and Safe for East Town Partnership. Who's going to introduce this item?
I'm going to chair.
You want to introduce yourself? I know who you are.
So my name is Alison Sherwood and I'm the Assistant Director for Community Safety Enforcement, which includes the NICE model and CCTV. So this is an overview report on the Safer Stratford and the Safer East Town partnerships. So these are place-based partnerships. Very much key around this is a partnership approach and making sure that we've got the correct operational leads in regards to these two areas. So these two areas are quite different. East Ham is probably more local, smaller businesses, whereas you've got Stratford, a much busier transport hub, and you've got a lot of different partners. So, but still looking at the key issues. So it's looking at violence against women and girls, it's looking about antisocial behaviour and crime, theft, robbery, youth violence as well. So both partnerships looking at that. The East Ham has an action plan that it works towards. The East Ham partnership's very much outcome driven, working closely with our colleagues in the police, licensing, trading standards, public realm as well, the look and the feel of the area, and obviously the Safer Business Network as well there. So, and then with Stratford, we've got a lot of external partners working with Westfield, the LLDC, we've got the mall and the different security in there as well, and the British Transport Police. Both of these areas have got town centre teams with the police, so quite a bit of activity going on from the police there. I'm sure that Rich can cover that. And a lot of joint working, a lot of joint operations as well. So for East Ham, we've got one coming up for next week, and for Stratford, we had one last week. And these all feed into the winter plan as well. So, so overall, lots of good work going on. There are meetings, so Stratford has a monthly meeting, East Ham has a bi-monthly meeting, all the key partners are there discussing our action plan, the work that's going on, the plans that we've got, any new trends or themes, and anything that's seasonal as well that might affect those town centres. They're two very, very busy town centres, so lots of good work coming in from the Safer Business Networks, new radio systems for East Ham. And we're starting to see some reductions, so I'm sure that Rich will go over that as well in both areas. Lots and lots of activity going on around Stratford as well. We've got the community wealth building, so we've got the environmental improvements as well there, doing a lot of work in Stratford Park and around Meridian Square with the different issues that go on there. Lots of joint operations with the police as well too. So the police have had operations around knife arches that we've supported, joint patrols. We do a weekly joint patrol with the police in Stratford, and then we do regular joint patrols with the police in East Ham as well. Enforcing the public space protection order that we already have in place, and then obviously thinking about hopefully any proposals that we can get through on the next PSPOs, which will very much fit into the activities that we're seeing in these areas. Some outcomes there just from April to October that you can see that the patrols that are going on, some of the enforcement work that's going on, the referrals as well, because it's not just about that enforcement, it's about the education, the advice, the signposting and the outreach, and just that rule setting as well. So having officers on the ground, clearly visible with the police as well, using CCTV to task officers and to obviously look at where our problematic areas are. In East Ham, you can see a summary of the activity there from April to October, quite a lot of activity going on. There are patrols in both of these areas daily from the community safety enforcement officers. CCTV is tasked daily as well to monitor particular areas. And also we're looking at enhancing the CCTV in some of these locations, both Stratford and East Ham and Green Street. So you can see lots of operations, lots of joint working, some really, really good outcomes as well. Looking at emerging risks as well. So the issue of the skaters at Stratford, the e-bikes with the e-bike operation that we had, really successful e-bike operation that we had in East Ham just last week. So looking through just quite a bit of work there, and then looking at what we're going to do in the future, making sure, you know, that we're very much linked in around Westfields, around the mall, because what we don't want to do is be tackling an area, so we're putting lots and lots of effort into Meridian Square, and then we find out we've pushed it into the Broadway. So we're making sure that we're in all those key locations and know what we've got, sharing that intelligence. We've got a new system in place now, it's called eSINs, and that's an information sharing intelligence platform that we can share with the police, with the BCRP, looking at, you know, problematic repeat offenders as well. How do we share that with youth empowerment? Some really good work with youth empowerment in Stratford Park as well. The youth services noticed that a lot of young people were starting to sort of hang around with people that could possibly be drug dealing. They were starting to we were seeing cannabis being smoked. So, you know, the youth empowerment went in, spoke to them, found out what their interests were, what did they like doing, how can we use the space in the park better. And now we've got some exercise classes going on that are really well attended by a lot of the kids in the schools and in the colleges as well. So it's a diverting them away from that, bringing them in something that's healthy for them, good exercise, and they've got common interests. So that was quite a good piece of work that's going on. So lots of work.
Any questions?
Thanks for walking through a lot of that. Maybe there's a dumb question. When we talk about like safer Stratford, what are the boundaries, what we consider to be the safer Stratford area that we consider within that?
Yeah, so the areas, so in the meeting, all the partners are there and we'll discuss, because what usually causes a problem in Westfield's car park will then probably overspill into Meridian Square or into the mall or into the Broadway. So it's quite broad, but when we're looking at about public space, then we're looking more at Meridian Square, we're looking at Stratford Broadway, into even up to Maryland a little bit where we're seeing problems, and then over into Stratford Park, into the Olympic Park, and a little bit into the E20 area. But what we don't want to do is go too big, because then obviously it waters everything down, and then we lose a bit of focus. But we try both of these locations have quite a high footfall, so it's a lot of shops, not so much residential, but it's looking at those areas. So High Street North in particular, going from the Barking Road all the way along High Street North, possibly up until about Plashett Park, and all those little side streets that you see, there could be market stalls and things like that. So looking at that area where the station is as well, which is all covered by CCTV, and into Meridian Square where we've got the CCTV as well. The service groups in Stratford.
Thanks for answering that. Are the boundaries is this a model where the boundaries are clearly defined, or and is there a map of this somewhere?
Yeah.
So if I were to say, Westfield Avenue, for example, would you cover that? Do you look at that?
Is it the wards? Is it Stratford Ward or Stratford Park?
No.
Or is it, for example, there's bits of Forest Gate Ward, which is E15, for example?
Yeah.
So
probably going forward, what we can do is I could sort of do a map, so I can outline it. But it's not. I don't want to be as strict as I go, that's my map.
Yeah. So the reason I ask is because you're right. Like there's a lot of footfall, but the kind of where that is directed changes sort of day to day. Like if there's a game on, it'll be sending quite a lot of people, or concert or whatever it is at the stadium, that'll be sending quite a lot of people into through what you would consider the more residential bits of
Yeah, definitely.
park. But it doesn't feel like that when you're there. Like it feels just as busy as, and then you've also got Stratford International Station as well, which kind of, I sometimes think that bit around there gets missed out as part of the Stratford town centre because it's seen as the residential area.
And
I'm not sure, when you look at the crime profile, that's justified.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right, because we see when we have football, we see that Jupp Road gets that, whereas if there weren't football, it might not necessarily be happening there. There's a pub
But
there.
with Stratford International Station being where it is, effectively in what feels like a residential area, the football does get pulled up to there. And then also if there are diversions because of games or whatever, people coming out of Stratford Station, different areas get busy at different times as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I just, when I'm sort of talking about police in the area, I'm like, oh, but you've got the Stratford, Safer Stratford thing. I'm like, yeah, but I don't always feel like it talks a lot about Stratford Town Centre, and that's great. And I may be being too much of a ward councillor here, but I don't know that it always directs at where the footfall is for.
I think that you've got a suggestion, a map.
Yeah.
With leaded edges. The question, I'm trying not to be parochial Stratford councillor. Indulge me. On football days, there's lots of men who can't find a toilet, if you know what I mean, around Doran, Walk and that sort of area. And there's a trail of, stuff from the station all the way through. So that's one part of my question. And the other part of my question, Meridian Square, there are all sorts of branches of religions there on a weekend. And I wondered, what do we do? And I mean it, there's two examples, but there's lots of that activity in those areas. How are we tackling that sort of issues? And are we time limited by working hours?
So our working hours are quite good, especially through
Don't give the time.
Especially over the weekends, they're extended, so we're into the evening. Because that area sort of livens up as it gets a bit later. When it comes to the groups in Meridian Square, we're actively tackling those now, and we're using highway legislation because that's a highway. It's an access route. It's got to be. It should be kept clear. So we're using the Highways Act, we're using statutory notices so that we can issue, if they don't comply, then people can be fined. So we are doing those now. You'll see the figures in the report there for that. We're experiencing problems with people coming, especially this time of the year, selling items, so selling perfume, toys, that kind of thing. That can be different type of legislation. We can use that under the street trading legislation. So we're looking at that. So there are a number of tools within our toolkit that we can use, obviously depending on what sort of offence is being committed. And the officers are not scared to use those powers. And
that Meridian Square is technically it's called a sterile area, isn't it? It must be, because in terms
it's
of
an evacuation route.
And that land, is it owned by us or is it British Transport Police?
I'd have to get you another map.
I love a map.
There's little stubs, and that would be TfL, and then it will be us, and then it will be Westfields, because that's the problems that that's one of the challenges we face. We could say to someone, you can't do this here. They go, okay, I'll go on them steps up there. But there are ways that
don't tell us what the ways are.
No,
it is a problem.
It is. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Great, because there is if I put my ward cap, there are people say to me, there's the noise, there's the aggravation, and there's people milling around. But it is on your plot.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah. So the officers will tackle anyone using amplified sound.
Sorry, two questions in this agenda item really is screaming for us to be ward councillors. You've got the Stratford Council,
Let's be strategic. Let's raise one.
Let's talk about
No
casework. Going forward, not complaining about something in the past. Next summer, what's going to be different so that we don't see the same kind of skating incidents that we were seeing all through this summer? And on like phone snatching, it's pretty clear that like, because I talk to the local police about this all the time, they don't have the tools to effectively solve this. Like, it doesn't matter how many like safe and neighbourhood team meetings we have where we say it's a priority. Like this is going to need to involve government and the tech companies, and probably changing legislation in terms of like warrants for searches and things like that. What conversations are we actually having with government? I realise we're just a council, but we do have one of the hotspots for this in London. Because of the like, particularly in kind of the Stratford area, because it's so easy to get around on like these e-bikes, and there's so many people, they can just get away quicker than the police can get to them. So this is going to require national action, I think, to solve. What are we doing to influence that? Yeah.
After that, probably comment on some of those points. I know recently some of the action around e-bike theft as well, some of it was just posted today, actually, right, about what the work around, from Met side anyway, especially, around, from a Met police side or perspective.
Sorry, where was it posted?
Online. Online is a big play. I don't make it so political, but Sadiq made an announcement earlier today.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So just in terms of the mandate around e-bikes and how the Met Police will be putting in more measures around that. And then from a local perspective as well, around some of the work that you see from we talk about trading standard and license perspective is where some of these issues are coming from, so operations around e-bikes and some of the campaign working with LFB as well. So that's part of the key thing, call to action. And that came out again, same again from London Fire Brigade. We work quite closely, especially in my role as well, around some of the issues, the wider issues around what we're seeing about e-bikes, and then targeting operations as well, which took place quite recently. And then some of the proactive work around, obviously you talked about the national level, around how holding to account some of the providers, and that's been put into place around how challenging providers around what do they need to do to identify. And one of the key things, going to London councils, is that really big market where a lot of these firms are going internationally, and how do we put measures in place to safeguard our residents. Some of the work that's being done with the universities, a key part of it is around how to educate, and some of the news that gets dropped into, and then making sure at the same time from a local level, what do we do to amplify that message around, look, these are really high profile areas of concern. What do we do with our town centre teams? What do we do with London Fire Brigade? All those partners involved to make sure that, look, people don't make it so easy to take this £1,800 fine, right?
I mean, I get
On
what you're
that
saying,
level,
Councillor Birdie, but like, I sometimes it feels like telling people to kind of, yes, people, need to be careful about their devices, but if someone's coming out of a train station and they need to work out where they need to go, they should be able to do that without living in fear of someone coming by and stealing their phone. And we need to do what we can to create an environment. And sometimes I feel like we do get too much on the like educating people. Are we having any conversation? Because even when the phone is stolen and it's got a tracker and we can see it's in this house, the government, the police tell us that they can't do anything to retrieve it because the tracker isn't specific enough, or even if you can hear a sound coming from because you can make a beep, and it's we need to be telling government that actually residents expect better than this, that when the phone changes.
Well, so can I let the cabinet member take that away and speak to the police?
So you might want to answer that on that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what we saying to government about this? Like if the police can't get our devices back even when we know where they are, that's a pretty big problem.
So one of the difficulties here we have, and we sort of touched on it earlier about how small the world's getting. When the police recover 40,000 stolen phones, all destined for another country, that we can't have any impact on that country. We can't stop them purchasing the phones. So you get issues where it's almost outside of my remit. Yes, we will get situations where we go, okay, the phone's pinged. However, it's pinged to a block of flats. And if I've only got half a dozen officers there to really respond to emergencies, are they going to be able to knock on every single one of those flats to try and work out who has stolen this phone? So in the fast time situation, it's resources, it's the nature of the technology where it won't tell you at height. And then there are also, unfortunately, ways to defeat that technology, which I won't go into here for obvious reasons.
Okay, so it's a tactical issue, I get that. Yes, your question.
Oh, I asked about the skaters.
So the skaters, you can make it very brief from the skaters, very brief.
Good evening, everyone. Conor Murphy, I'm the Community Safety Enforcement Manager, but I'm also the Chair of the Safe Stratford Partnership. So if I could take your question, Councillor, in regard to the skaters. From the report, I'm sure you've obviously read the amount of work that's gone into it, but a lot of that we're hoping will cascade down into some positive work that's going to come out of it and hopefully reduce the issues that we've been experiencing over the last 2 years. Most notably, we've got, through the Safe Stratford Partnership, the LLDC, through their engagement with the other 4 boroughs that we're obviously linked with, and the skaters is a cross-borough problem, have led on a skater charter, they've led on 2 skater engagement events, and through those engagement events, we've been able to identify some core sort of like community leaders within that subculture. And some of the things that they've brought to us, we're trying to action. So, for instance, they've asked for further engagement for our leisure and sports. We're looking at dedicated spaces within our leisure centres, and some of the sort of like more experienced skaters are going to become coaches for some of our children, particularly around like our roller disco type events and stuff. So that's how we're reaching and engaging.
Did you get into why these places are attracting them? Because obviously
it's the surface. It's the purely smooth, perfect, blemish-free surface.
But you've got some work in place which is going to be tackling that.
Well, we've looked at dedicated spaces. So we've looked at numerous spaces up and around the Olympic Park. We've made those inquiries. Unfortunately, we've not had much success. But through the urban sports strategy,
like with the LDC,
with the landowners. So there's
or the Olympic Park.
On the Olympic Park, yeah.
Which is
We've looked at Lee Valley. The LLDC.
Okay.
There was some space up around the Lee Valley, sort of like the old BMX track that we was particularly interested in.
Everyone wants that space. Like you're the third person that's told me they want that space.
Don't tell anyone else, mate. Come on, don't distract the council.
So, as well, because it's a cross-London issue as well, the transport hub is a major pull for it. But we are actually looking for the urban sports strategy in a dedicated space.
Can I ask, when you get to the conclusion of some of those issues, just write a small note to the committee,
absolutely,
just to update us from the meeting.
Yeah, more than happy
and we'll
to
share that around. There are certain Stratford Council here will be very interested in that.
Right, no problem.
That's really good.
Piece of work.
Yeah, it's a really great piece of work. Just going to leave one else.
Yeah, and relatedly, so a lot of the crime feels like it's driven by certain characteristics about Stratford and East Ham and the nature of those spaces. When things come to us on licensing committee, planning committee, what kind of questions do we need to be asking of the projects and things? Like when a new housing development in Stratford comes to us, what do we need to be asking to kind of think about design out crime? If you hold any purchase in that.
Good question. I don't mean, because I'm on the planning committee, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can probably just give some views on these, are probably personal views. I mean, designing out crime is really, really important because that's your earliest opportunity. We've set up a bit of a group, which is called the Strategic Place Shaping Group. So it's not a formal governance meeting, it's more a sort of an advisory and an officer level group where we can basically look at planning applications through the pipeline. So anything that's coming through, we could have an influence on early or have a chat about and try and mitigate them. We're trying to do
Can I
that.
ask a question? Why are you formally, statutorily constituted? Why are you an advisory?
That particular group is just an officer group, Chair. That's something we've identified what we need to do better about one council.
Let me ask you another way.
Yeah.
When I go to the development committee and I get a stack of papers like that, and I get the planners telling me an answer to people's objections, blah, 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 I don't think I've ever seen Newham safety team say this about the application.
Police are responding though. The police are a statutory
The police are statutory responding, yeah, but I don't see the council impacting. And maybe is that not a role for us?
No, I mean there are some. I'm not necessarily a planner by trade, council, so but we do get consultation. The police, as Councillor Higgins said, they do get design out crime advice, and they usually go through. There is a challenge in the Met. They've reduced their DOCOs, the design out crime officers. So we're trying to mitigate that by training up some of Alison's team of community safety enforcement as problem solvers. So they can do basic what we call environmental visual audits, because as the council said, design out's really important.
So can we take that as a recommendation, but you further investigate formalising Newham's ASB community safety teams have a much more formal role in some of our application, be that be strategic and local planning?
Yeah, that's fine. We'd have to comply with statutory guidelines, but we absolutely want to do more around that because it's really important. Yeah.
So no brainer.
Yeah.
Just a question: do you have? Well, this is a really good report. Do you have a formal communications officer in that 4th floor communication zone? Is there an officer dedicated to you?
Not particularly. I mean, being candid, obviously we do struggle with comms. The comms team are very, very small. And we have to fight for bandwidth.
Okay.
We do have a comms work programme that Councillor Verdi and I and the heads of services signed off, and we do specific campaigns. So, like for example,
the reason why I asked the question, Alison's a very good report here. There's lots of information I'm sure the Ward Council would love to receive, and residents would love to receive. Right? Can I ask you to take it away? Who's the cabinet member for comms? You.
And I've got a lot of responsibility for that
Who covers comms? Charlie?
It comes a bit under the...
I think it might, to be fair, I think the mayor might
Mayor,
have
Okay.
oversight.
So can we have two recommendations? But Councillor Verdi takes his life in his hands and talks to the mayor about her portfolio, because it is communication. But also, can we ask your two questions? And this is a good report. I don't see why it should just live and die in this report here. There are other elements that could be fed out to residents in different ways, using all the communication routes. So can I leave that as an action for you to take away? I think we must get this stuff out. The debate we had there about the skaters, what's in the report, really good stuff, right? We must empower people. So can I ask you to empower, Councillor Verdi, we were talking to the mayor about the common portfolio, so he opened the door for you anyway. And I'm looking at Alison, can you find a way, the most appropriate way of getting the information out here as appropriate to inform the different audiences? Because it's really good bits in here.
Chair, just one comment, I'm conscious of time, is one of the things we've tried to do with the Newham Safety Partnership is bring it to life, as I've called it. So, for example, it started off, we've changed the name because it used to be Newham Community Safety Partnership, which is a bit vanilla. We've got a logo, which sounds quite minor, but we've got something that we're using, and also we've set up a particular community safety portal on the Well Newham site.
Yeah.
So basically, we've now got, for example, all the partners that are on there represented. We've put the good the scrutiny reports go on there, the annual report. We've got a LinkedIn page as well, and I appreciate that's got a very limited reach, but we have started to move towards that because I was very conscious no one was knowing what the partnership was about.
And I think over the information has got a lot better in terms of the quality of the reports and its timeliness and its specificity. I just think let's have another go of using this information and getting it out there. Let's not, if we've got comms officers, they should be communicating with the resident. I don't know what they're doing, but let's get this out there, because I think Stratford and East Ham, is it Bendish Road, that bus stop? Even I know it. I'm not, everyone talks about Bendish Road in East Ham. However, there's lots of work happening around that to tackle the several constituent factors, but we're not telling residents. People just see it and getting annoyed. If you tell them it's a lot more complicated than what it is, this is what we're doing, this is the number or the email address to contact to find more information, that's what we're looking for. I think the information's here, let's just find the right, appropriate and resident-focused way. We tell residents what we're doing in their name. Half the problem in this borough, we don't tell them what we're doing, right? And we keep it in ourselves, and the resident starts complaining. When we tell them, they say, why didn't you tell me that? I'm just looking at this and thinking, there's some really good work here, especially being a Stratford Ward councillor. I've got lots of information from Alison today, which I can use in my ward, and I'll put Nate as well.
Just to mention, obviously for you guys, more residents, but from us, when we're telling partners, that people at MOPAC and Home Office do know the work that Stratford Partnership is doing.
Good.
And probably recognition is probably, we got nominated for a national award back in July for a partnership project award, and that was specifically the Stratford Partnership.
Yeah.
So the work is going out maybe more from my side to MOPAC and Home Office and nationally, and probably the same stuff I can provide to Alison to go out with as well.
I'm reliably informed that TikTok is a form of communication. Well, but at my age group. You showed me I've got a phone, I think it's a very quickly, I move on, Tony.
Okay. Listen, it's just for you. The kingdom, are they under you or not?
Right, next, move on. And for the people, he meant kingdom as in the contract, not kingdom as in the Lord.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Yeah, where does it sit?
So that's Amy Harris, or?
Yes, I'm gonna.
Public realm, Amy Harris. So we had to ask that question.
Why isn't that within?
All right, let's move on. Hold on.
No, I think, Chair, I think there's a good question. Why isn't it within community safety?
Who wants to answer that?
I'm happy to, and.
Can you introduce yourself?
Sorry, Rebecca Johnson, I'm the Corporate Director of Environment.
And welcome to your first meeting.
It is my first meeting and I haven't quite even hit 2 weeks yet, so this is it's been very, very interesting today, and I'm sure Sean will be able to contribute some additional context around this as well. But certainly from discussions I've had with Amy is that a lot of this, the Kingdom's focus is around the environment crime, which obviously have strong links with street cleansing, fly tipping, littering, and spitting and that sort of stuff. So it's around that sort of street cleanliness focus, which I think is why that justification around sitting in the public realm area.
Okay, brilliant. Right, that was a really good session. Thank you, Alison, thank you. Let's work the comms out. Councillor Verdi, you have your mission. You haven't accepted it. No, we've got it. I think I've noted it down. It's not
So we moved the dial quite a lot since then. That's why we've gone on.
It's noted you're going to speak to the mayor about our communication portfolio, which will allow Alison to do great work. Is that correct?
We can do a lot in that time anyway to add on.
We did a lot.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to move on to the last item, which is the new integrated community enforcement model. Nice. Who's going to lead this one on?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this, yeah. So this report covers NICE 1 year on. So we began September last year. This falls under my responsibility. I chair the meetings, so there is a weekly GRIP meeting and there is a monthly meeting as well.
What's the GRIP meeting?
So the GRIP meeting, so NICE is about collaboration, coordination, communication and bringing together the workforce. So more often than not, you've got a problem and it will take more than one service area to fix that. So that's about bringing people together so we're not working in silos. So before this, and when we started with the meetings, we realised that services were bringing in problems, and then I would think, oh yeah, I've got that problem too, and it's because my bit's a little bit different from their bit. So NICE is about integrated enforcement, bringing everyone together and having a sort of a partnership response and a problem-solving approach to it. So just increasing our communication and working together. So, and it's very much done that, I feel. So weekly we have a GRIP meeting, and the GRIP meeting is where we can have up to about 19 people on this call every week, and it's where services bring problems to that meeting where they need a partnership response and help from other services. So, for instance, it could be that our neighbourhood, our housing response officers, so they deal with crime in estates and in blocks. They need help with a particular problem in a block that's spilling out into the communal area, sometimes a bit on the street as well. So it will come. They'll come to that. We'll talk about that problem. Think about how we can solve it, what enforcement we need to take and who we need help with that enforcement. So we have a NICE GRIP tracker. All that work is logged on the tracker. And then the actions are added. So it keeps a running sort of thing on, a running timeline on that particular issue. And then the monthly meeting that we have is more data driven. So it looks at the bigger picture as well. It looks at problematic premises, licensing, that kind of thing. It looks at trends, it looks at themes, geographical areas, seasonal issues, that type of thing. So we're planning for things like bonfire night, fireworks, New Year's Eve in advance, because everyone knows it's coming. We don't need to, we do that well in advance. There's a lot of key partners. So the police are a key partner, our colleagues in PRS, colleagues in housing, licensing, trade and standards, animal welfare, our neighbourhood response officers, CCTV, parking enforcement. So you can see how broad it goes. And people have started, I think services have started to realise that it's benefiting them, and we're really getting things done now. So I've given a couple of sort of case studies as an example in there as well. And you can see from on the tracker, there's 60 cases solved already. And these are not small cases. These are quite complex, quite big cases. And the idea of calling it a grip is that we grip that problem and everyone starts working at it, and it's quite fast time. It's just that some of the challenges can be that they're quite big problems, so it needs quite a hefty response to it. So, but there are quite a few. There are already 60 cases solved on that tracker. We're working on about 12 or 14, I think it is at the moment. And then you can kind of see the profile breakdown of what those issues are. Public space is probably one of the biggest issues, which would kind of probably make sense.
Yeah. What has been your biggest success this year in this area? What do you personally think? You know what? We've done well.
Yeah, Stratford Park, although you may say, and probably the licensed premise on the Broadway that I've given us the case study as well, but Stratford Park for me, so we had a lot of problems in that park. So we have got CCTV trained, we've got licensing doing the compliance visits around there. We've got parks doing works in there, fixing gates, cutting back, that type of thing. We've had an environmental visual audit in there as well that's pulled up a lot of work. We've done sort of work around our cameras and our CCTV as well. And I think for me, obviously the youth empowerment as well, and that diversion. And now we're looking at repairs in the mixed-use games area, so that when now the winter's coming, it's going to rain, we want them to still be able to do their exercise and undercover. So I think for me, the amount of partners that drew in and the effect that had on the youth in there, that's a really good sort of success story.
I'm accustomed as I am to put my Stratford Ward Councillor hat on.
Yeah. I should have picked somewhere else.
Yeah. How to come to the chair up. Yeah. But look, I will say I've had less complaints about Stratford Park in the last 18 months. Because they used to be like a thoroughfare. They buy the drugs in the park and they used to go and get fed in Stratford Centre. Right, yeah, and then go back. So there has been a little award on you. Any questions at all from this? It's good, really good.
Yeah,
and
really.
It's interesting you say that, because I've noticed the reduction. I didn't know why. You've told me why.
Yeah.
Again.
But I will say, sorry.
No, go on, don't apologise.
I will say, so we have a good news every month, and that's circulated to all members, MPs. And it's, you could feel there could be 100 slides on that, and but there are a good 10 slides on it with some really good news stories, and we try and be as broad as we can.
I'll give you a little challenge for next year. Can you get on that 6:30 BBC News? No, honestly, I'm fed up with reading about other boroughs, Croydon, Southwark, right? They're doing this stuff, but I'm only thinking they're doing it, but we're doing it. So can I, in your challenge to do your communications, can you, because I think it's just, residents are fed up seeing other South London boroughs on their TV, right? But we're doing it. So let's, you know what I'm saying?
Chair, just because you mentioned a couple of boroughs, and I won't mention any names, but just it's fair to say that some of the work we've done at Newham has fed into other proposals that are being implemented on both. The advantage they've got is sometimes they've got a little bit more investment, but we've been seen as a bit of a beacon of good practice in some areas.
Well, I think there's some local councils you can get on the BBC News. Can't do it before the close period. Well, I'm sure you can find some councillors to help you in the comms, can't you? I'm joking. That's not an advert, right? But what that's a serious point. You know, again, most residents don't know what's going on, and they need to see this. And if we didn't have the good evidence, then we wouldn't have anything to talk about. But we've got the stuff to talk about. So really, what I'm asking you is to perhaps take that step back, and I'm perhaps looking at the corporate director to take that forward in your new role. Because there's some good work here, corporate director, Rebecca. But I think if people knew more what's going on, I think all our lives would be a lot easier. Because in news, often the perception is our problem, not the reality. Right? So that right? So really good. Thank you. Are there any questions on this? I think the members are content. I think because well done. All right. Thank you. Can we note that report? Before we go on to the next item, I'm looking at the next meeting. Just want to agree the items. So the next meeting on the 4th of February, we're looking at road safety and curb infrastructure. Yeah. And we're looking at capital investment in highways, maintenance, and sustainable transport. And then we're looking at Thames water investment. I think reading through the lines, we're looking at potholes there, aren't we? I think. Yeah. Come on, let's not tell about it, right?
You got Thames water driving into it.
Yeah, our Thames water. They are right. So we're looking at.
We make sure we get a good chunk of time for us to have that stuff.
God, you mean to be constructive with this?
Yeah, I can be constructive.
Yeah. So road safety, curbside brackets, potholes. That's what's coming, right? The next meeting that'll be there. And road safety. Are you, Rebecca? Are you happy with the items and Councillor Verdi? What's on the next meeting?
I'd say a lot of those items don't sit with myself.
No?
No.
So,
Councillor Ruiz under. It's just
but isn't your portfolio really long?
I wish I could cover all of it.
Right.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Rebecca, are you happy with the items? Is it you?
Yes,
Right. But the other side is Sarah Rose.
there's a mixture across
yeah,
the board
no.
in terms of
Obviously,
the.
with those subject matters, you've got Councillor Ruiz, Councillor John Morris, and there's elements you probably have some bits of public realm, which will be John Whitworth and Councillor Patel.
Okay.
Just listening to what you've said on that work programme, specifically around highways and sustainable transport.
It'll be predominantly Ruiz and
Councillor Ruiz and Councillor Morris, yeah.
That's useful clarification. And can I say for the officers here tonight, thank you for the information. Is there any, so closing the meeting, any remarks, any items you think you missed out or points you want to make?
No.
No. Can I say to myself, and I'll ask them, it's a really good meeting. The reports are excellent. Please keep the standard up, and the contributions are excellent as well. They're engaging. I learned loads of stuff as a ward councillor and the chair. Thank you very much. And please keep that standard up. What I always say, when I find myself in this meeting, we do lots of great work, but we don't tell anyone about it. You know, it's like a broken record. Please, in next year, can we break that cycle? Yeah, take it forward. And please, Councillor Verdi is going to fight the battle for you in terms of communication. So on the 4th of February, we shall be reviewing his work. I know that Alison and Lisa will be coming and showing us examples of your communication. That's correct, isn't it? I'm looking at the corporate director who will make that happen.
Some of it's already happening anyway.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's see. 4th of February, tune in people at home. You can see what happens there. Right. Any final remarks?
Yeah, echo the remarks and that point around outcomes and that focus on what actual effects it's having, that's really helpful focus. And if anything going forward, if we can be of any use in terms of speaking to government or in our roles on other committees, please do just let us know.
Thank you. Value that big time.
Spoken.
No, you were brilliant tonight. Very constructive. For a change. No, you were good. I joke. Rebecca, as the corporate director, have you got any observations? This is your first meeting. Have you got any observations or comments you want to make at all?
Only that I think it's clear that a lot of passion and dedication and commitment has been put in by officers and the partnerships in order to deliver, this, as you mentioned, extensive and comprehensive report that demonstrates a lot of that hard work. So I've certainly, equally to you, have learnt a lot, considering it's early days for me as well. So just to echo that and appreciate and pass my thanks on to everybody.
Lovely.
as well.
And if, obviously, but please enjoy Christmas or Hanukkah or Eid or whatever religious ceremony you're partaking. Please enjoy it, have a good time. Don't eat too much turkey, and I'll see you in the new year. But again, really great meeting, and thank you. It's a really joy to be here tonight to hear this. I'll be taking it home and reading it again. Some really great work here, and thank you. There's a lot of work being put in these reports. I think we always have to say thank you as officers and members of the committee. So thank you, Kevin. Have you got any final remark? Time. The time is now 20:49. We can go home, right? Is that right? He wanted us to stay till 9:30. But because you have an excellent chair, it's very efficient. We're not doing that, right?